It was the provocation Europe had been dreading. On September the 10th, more than 19 Russian drones crossed into Polish airspace. According to German daily Die Welt, at least 5 of them appeared to be on a direct flight path for a NATO airbase. It was, in the words of The Economist, the worst violation of NATO airspace since its foundation more than 75 years ago. Now, since you're the sort of person who watches videos on European air defense, you probably already know what happened next. The scrambling of Polish and Dutch fighter jets to intercept, the deployment of a German Patriot missile battery, the shoot-down of these small, cheap drones with multi-million-dollar missiles. You'll also likely be aware of the aftermath, the activation of NATO's Article 4 by Warsaw, the inevitable Russian denials that the incursion had been deliberate, the way the President of the United States shrugged off what had happened, despite Poland being one of America's staunchest allies. And then, 3 days later, the story that another Russian drone had crossed into Romanian airspace, as if taunting the NATO alliance. This was followed on September the 19th by Moscow's fighter jets entering Estonia's skies for 12 minutes without authorization. But while much of the commentary is focused on the geopolitical fallout, there's another aspect of the Kremlin's incursion into Polish skies. One that this video is going to focus on. You know that from the title. The ways the events of September the 10th have demonstrated alarming gaps in European air defenses. Just before we go any further, just a quick pause to tell you about something we've been cooking up here at WarFronts, and we are excited to share it. And no, it's not the launch of WeebFronts. Jesus Christ, leave me alone. I've got enough channels. But I think it might be nearly as good as that. So have you ever got to the end of the week and found yourself thinking something along the lines of, oh man, I was just feeling so optimistic about the state of the world, and I'd love for that to be ruined by even more war fronts. That would bring me down nicely. Well, good news for you, my friends. I hear you. In fact, we at WarFronts hear you so loudly, we're launching a brand new... It's that site. Subscriber service. Look at this. I set this up. That's where you can go. It's a place for people who see us putting out 6 videos a week and go, amateurs. For $5 a month, you'll get access to 2 exclusive videos each and every week. The first 2 are already up on whether Poland could win a war against Russia. Pretty timely, we know, you're welcome. And on just how South Korea came to make the best tank on Earth. And we've got a lot more in the pipeline, including a weekly show covering the 3 most important war stories everybody else is ignoring. And as a bonus, our writers are also producing 2 in-depth written articles a week for those of you who like to get their information the old-fashioned way. And now we know what you're thinking. Oh man, they're going to paywall videos. This sucks. Look, I have learned from the mistakes that every other YouTuber who launches something like this before me has made. No, we're still on YouTube. Everything is as it was before. There are still those 6 videos a week that we are grinding away making for you. You're so welcome. Everything on fronts.co is a bonus for those of you who want to cough up the princely sum of $5 American a month. So, if you want more of my face delivering important but oh so depressing news straight to your eyeballs, head over to fronts.co. God damn it, it's this side. It's so hard. My preview monitors... Here, fronts.co, not com. I couldn't get the com. The co was expensive enough. That's fronts.co, not com. And now back to today's video. Thank you. It also helps support the show. That wasn't in the copy, but it also helps us make videos, and thank you so much. Back to the episode. Right now, the continent is lacking both the kit and the know-how to defend itself against the sort of high-intensity air war Russia is unleashing against Ukraine. Instead, Europe appears to be stockpiling for an imagined conflict against a Russia that ceased to exist sometime in 2022, one in which salvos would consist of a scattering of expensive cruise missiles rather than a barrage of over 800 drones, decoys, and rockets designed to saturate air defenses. And that is a major problem, because if NATO's response to the Kremlin violating Poland's airspace has shown anything, it's that the alliance is unwilling to defend itself. That it would rather make a lot of irritated noises than confront a threat head-on. As the Atlantic Council writes, for the Russians, grey zone acts of aggression such as the recent drone raid on Poland offer an opportunity to gauge how far they can go without provoking a major military response. Each new operation is a probe. If Russian drones can cross into Poland unchecked, the next stage may be for missiles to begin accidentally striking NATO territory. But even if Moscow doesn't quite go that far, there are still reasons to be worried. After all, not all the drones over Polish airspace were successfully shot down, and while Warsaw claims it only targeted those it thought were carrying warheads, ignoring the rest, there are worries that this explanation may be more to do with saving face than anything else. And, well, if this was a test, it was a test that NATO failed. It wasn't meant to be this way. On paper, the layered air defenses of the alliance in Europe look pretty formidable. In a recent article, The Economist provided a helpful breakdown of how NATO's aerial shield works. First, you have the monitoring equipment, 14 airborne early warning and control aircraft, and several high-altitude RQ-4D Phoenix drones, not to mention ground-based radar systems. Next, you have the stuff that's meant to destroy any threats detected. In Eastern Europe, that's fighter jets on constant patrol, ground-based air defense systems like Patriot batteries, and destroyers at sea that come equipped with their own interceptors. Taken together, the shield these components provide are referred to as integrated air and missile defense. Now, even before the drone incursion, it was clear that this shield was suffering serious gaps. Many systems have been sent to Ukraine, with more and more getting offered all the time. Germany just offered Kyiv 2 Patriot batteries, for example, and while the US has promised to replace them, that order will take a long time to fulfill. But even in a world where Europe has refused to donate any of its air defenses to Kyiv, there would still be problems. Back in July, the Center for European Policy Analysis tried to dig into the continent's ability to shield itself from Russian missiles. What it found was all sorts of worrying. According to Ukrainian intelligence, Russia is currently producing somewhere between 840 and 1,020 short and medium-range missiles annually, principally the 9M723 and the KH-47M2 Kinzhal. By contrast, combined Patriot interceptor production across the world is about 850 a year, with plans to reach 1,130 annually by 2027. Now, that's obviously about on par with Russian missile production, but here's the thing. These interceptors aren't just for Europe, they're also for East Asia, the US homeland, the Middle East. As SIPA noted, quote, "These interceptors are needed everywhere. European allies will be lucky if they get half the number produced." So even if Russia suddenly abandoned drone production tomorrow, Europe still wouldn't have enough Patriot interceptors to defend itself, nor would the French-Italian SAP-T likely be able to make up the shortfall. Even fewer interceptors are made annually, and reports from Ukraine suggest their accuracy is lower than that of the Patriot, requiring additional interceptors to down missiles. There are also other pre-existing issues too. The Financial Times highlights that most European of problems, a fragmented defense posture, whereby frontline states are doing wildly different things with not enough cross-border cooperation. Meanwhile, The Economist's article on the alliance's air shield also notes that the entire thing is dependent on America, not just because the US manufactures most of the kit used, but also because American expertise is needed on the command and control side. In an age in which the US president shrugs off Russian drone incursions into Poland and muses about annexing Greenland from the Kingdom of Denmark, that dependence is obviously, let's say, less than ideal. Yet even if America were currently led by a Europhile president who'd personally fly a fighter jet along NATO's eastern flank to protect it, the alliance would still be in trouble. And that's because over 3 years of war in Ukraine have changed the way Russia operates, from a professional army that relies on high-tech kit to a mass force that's seemingly trying to live up to the old quote often attributed to Stalin that quantity has a quality all of its own. In this case, the quantity is supplied by the mass-produced Shahed drones Russia keeps pumping out. According to the analysis at Roshan Consulting, Moscow produces 70,000 of these drones annually, plus decoys like the plywood and styrofoam Jabira, which is estimated to cost a mere $10,000 per unit. It's a lot for you or me, but not much for a government. Just to give you a comparison here, the Patriot Interceptor, just one of them, costs $2 million. As SIPA notes, as in Ukraine, these drones could saturate Europe's limited defenses, giving the more destructive ballistic weapons a greater chance of hitting their targets. Really though, it's the economics of it all that show just how doomed the current system of European air defense is. Deploying costly F-35s and Patriot batteries to take out every cheap drone that crosses into Alliance airspace is fine once, is fine maybe twice, or maybe even 3 times. But in an aerial war like that which Ukraine is witnessing, in which the country has suffered hundreds of nights of bombardments, it becomes unsustainable. As the German analyst Ulrich Franke put it, what are we going to do? Send F-16s and F-35s every time? It's not sustainable. At this point, a certain subset of American viewers may be rolling their eyes and thinking something along the lines of, well, look, guys, we told you to get your together. Maybe if you'd spend more on defense and less on healthcare and croissants, then you wouldn't be in this mess. And look, while this channel has long advocated to Europe to get its shit together, this is one of the rare instances where underspending and neglect of defense actually can't be blamed. Remember, the drones on September the 10th crossed into Poland, the golden boy of NATO. As percentage of GDP, Warsaw spends more on its defense than the United States. And it's spent wisely, shelling out on Patriot batteries, F-35s, Apache attack helicopters, and anything else needed to beat a conventional opponent in a land war. The problem is that Russia is no longer a conventional opponent. It is a badly degraded military backed up with nukes that relies on overwhelming the enemy with waves of expendable units, whether they be cheap drones or ordinary soldiers the command sees as dispensable. Roshan Consulting sums it up thusly, quote, "The dynamic has created a paradox. The Polish armed forces are arguably better positioned for high-intensity conventional warfare than their principal adversary, Russia. At the same time, however, they remain unprepared to counter the large-scale employment of inexpensive unmanned systems." Now, Poland isn't the only European nation to fall into this trap. While Politico reports that the EU is trying to nudge countries into spending some of the new rearmament loans on air defense, most of that money is going into Patriots and Franco-Italian SAMP-T systems. Again, these are great for taking down expensive missiles. They're less good for taking out huge swarms of cheap drones. So the question then becomes, what do we do about it? What can NATO do to ensure that it can defend its eastern flank against the sort of air war tactics Russia has unleashed on Kyiv? Well, the answer is something called Operation Eastern Sentry, which is described by the German media outlet DW thusly. Quote, "The multi-domain activity will involve the strengthening of both ground bases and air defenses and continue for an undisclosed amount of time." Unofficially, though, there's only one obvious answer: working with and learning from Ukraine. Ukraine has been under near constant Russian bombardment for years now, and while Moscow's tactic of overwhelming air defenses with drones and decoys before lobbing in the missiles has been devastating, it hasn't yet broken the country. Politico reports that the interception rate in a typical attack is between 80 and 90%. If it wants to endure a future war with Russia, Europe will need to adopt some of Kyiv's tactics. Chief among them is the use of cheap interceptor drones, which destroy Russia's Shaheds for a comparable cost. But Kyiv has also become a leader in electronic warfare, as well as finding new ways to detect incoming drones before they arrive. Today, much of Ukraine is covered by a network of acoustic sensors that can pick up the telltale sound of incoming drones. The reason this is necessary is that Shaheds are so small and fly so low that they can be hard to detect via traditional radar. The Financial Times describes what happens when the acoustic sensors pick up an inbound swarm. Quote, "That intelligence is then fed to hundreds of mobile teams equipped with anti-aircraft cannon and heavy machine guns, a far cheaper solution than using missile interceptors." Now, to its credit, Europe is now trying to learn these lessons. Poland has set up a new training pipeline whereby Ukraine will supply its air defense crews with equipment and expertise. Latvia is installing its own acoustic monitoring system modeled on the Ukrainian one. Meanwhile, Brussels is preparing to invest $6 billion in joint drone production with Kyiv to create Europe's own cheap interceptor drones. Then there are the countries that are trying to take a far less traditional route. A recent New York Times report disclosed that an unmanned European nation is investing in air defense lasers from Australia that can supposedly, quote, "shoot down 20 drones a minute at a cost of less than 10 cents per shot." Nicknamed Apollo for the Greek god of light, it has about the same level of power as Israel's highly anticipated Iron Beam air defense laser, which is being built for its own military. That system won't be ready until 2028, but if it does work out, it could be absolutely game-changing. Unfortunately, the game itself will likely have changed by that point. Ukraine and Russia are both racing to innovate so fast that come 2028, drones could be unrecognizable compared to today. I mean, just look at how things have developed since the war began. In February of 2022, Ukraine's most advanced drone was the slow, lumbering Turkish Bayraktar TB2. By mid-2025, we're seeing tiny fiber optic drones spewing thermite and attacking other drones with nets, shotguns, and swords. At this rate, the drones of 2028 will probably be able to Voltron together and travel through time or something. Still, at least the Alliance acknowledges it now needs to do something. The only question is whether that something is going to be enough. If the last 2 weeks have taught us anything, it's that Russia isn't going to stop at a single drone incursion. Since Poland scrambled its defenses that September night, we've already seen incursions into the airspace of Romania and Estonia, plus the appearance of a military plane over the Baltic Sea. Nor should we assume the provocations will stop there. After all, the Kremlin has now seen that it can directly threaten Poland with drones, and the response from NATO will be nothing. And it's here that we finally get to the big decision Europe's NATO states will soon have to make. Keep responding with stern words and appeals to the UN, or take a kinetic step to ensure Russia never tries anything like this again. The new pattern we seem to be sinking into, of Moscow violating NATO airspace in increasingly aggressive ways while the US and Europe respond with nothing but words, not a sustainable one, is it? We know from watching his army in Ukraine what Putin's like. Any hesitation is seen as weakness. Any failure to respond to a provocation is an invitation to do something even more outrageous. Should the alliance continue down this path, we can safely assume that these grey zone tactics will become ever more destructive. Look, already, Russian agents are conducting sabotage operations across Europe. They're burning down depots and warehouses. Now, drones are crossing into NATO airspace. Drones that could be just plywood and styrofoam decoys, or could be carrying explosive warheads. Who knows what the next step is going to be? As SIPA's Fabian Hoffman has noted, quote, European NATO states cannot credibly defer Russia by signaling they will successfully defend themselves against an attack. Instead, they must deter by punishment, i.e. by signaling that any attack will come at an unacceptable cost. That will require building a formidable and credible counter-strike capability. And look, that is a big ask. Not just because Europe does not yet have the capability, but also because of what it entails. Shooting down a Russian jet? It feels like a big step, doesn't it? One that could lead to events escalating in really unpredictable ways. And yet, what other choice does the continent really have? With its increasing incursions, the Kremlin seems to have banked on two things. One, Europe is too scared to do anything about it without America's explicit backing. And two, that Donald Trump is neither prepared nor willing to defend the old continent. If that is the case, then calling Putin's bluff could be a terrifying mistake. Imagine the crisis Europe would plunge itself into if a Russian jet was shot down over Estonia, only for the President of the United States to declare Tallinn in the wrong and say that America would refuse to help in any conflict that followed. In that instant, Europe's entire security architecture would shatter. But perhaps worse would be to just let Putin keep on doing whatever the he wants. To pretend not to notice as the intrusions get deeper and more threatening, to pretend that somehow just this one time, letting the bully have his way will mean he doesn't keep coming back for more. Look, these days it's fashionable in weird corners of the internet to claim those standing up for European defense are warmongers, that shooting down a Russian jet is the sort of step only someone desperate for conflict to break out would take. To which we can only say, Putin has a choice in all of this. It's not some iron law of nature that Russian drones appear in NATO skies. It's the result of the warmonger in the Kremlin trying to push things as far as he can, trying to terrify NATO into cowering before him like a sniveling dog that's so used to being servile it can no longer even remember what it's like to bite back. As defense expert Chris Cremidas Courtney recently told DW, we should assume Russia is going to try this every couple of weeks until we can make them pay a price that makes them decide not to. The only question now is, do Europe and NATO have the balls to do so? Because if not, then these incursions are only going to get worse.